I'm back like I never left. It's Robbie. We about to do this react. This is going to be coming from Blackie Speaks, David Case, what they found in his phone. I just recently did a reaction. Matter of fact, that was my last video, or the video before last. Yeah, like I said, I'm going to be, following this whole case, seeing what's going on. Like I said, this is a sick individual here, and hopefully justice will be served, for Celeste Rivas Hernandez, because that shit didn't make no sense. But let's not waste no time. Let's get to the video.
Now, the David, spelled D4VD case is still developing. And like most of you guys know, the story has been full of uncertainty from the start. We went from not really knowing what happened to now things are finally starting to move in a direction where new information is coming out day by day. And one of the most shocking updates came out yesterday when prosecutors revealed what they claim was found on David's phone. Now, the question is, what did they find? And this is where things start to kind of take a much darker turn, if it wasn't already dark enough. Now, just so everyone is in the loop, so far what we know is this. Prosecutors allege that David invited Celeste to his home in April 2025, and that was the last time she was seen alive. They allege he was sexually involved with her, and that this allegedly began when she was under the age of 14, and that he had recurring access to her over an extended period of time.
Sick,
according to investigators, things escalated that night of April 23rd, 2025, when Celeste allegedly threatened to expose all of this, which prosecutors believe led to her murder, and later attempts to conceal what had happened before her remains were eventually found months later in September 2025 in that Tesla, which was registered to David. And here we are now. After all that, David has pleaded not guilty. His legal team is pushing to move this case to trial as soon as possible. At the same time, we've gotten updates like the autopsy results, which I made a video on yesterday, which gave a clearer picture of what happened to 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. However, this latest update is where things take a different turn, because now we're finding out more about material that prosecutors say was found on David's phone. During a court hearing yesterday, one of the prosecutors in the case, Beth Silverman, stated that as part of the investigation, law enforcement obtained search warrants for his phone and cloud storage accounts. And according to prosecutors, when they went through that data, they say they discovered what they described as a significant amount of child sexual abuse material, also known as CSAM.
Yo, off with this nigga, man. Off with this nigga. I don't even know why he even has, a legal team at this point. Like, fuck out of here.
And it's important to say, this is what prosecutors are alleging, as the investigation is still ongoing, and not all of the data has been fully reviewed yet. With that being said, what prosecutors are now claiming is that they allege David was in possession of CSAM, found on his phone and iCloud storage. According to reports, this came up after investigators executed search warrants on his devices, which is when they say they discovered this material. And this is where things started to get even more serious, because the prosecution is now making it clear that they're eager to present their evidence in court. And the reason for that is because what they're calling the totality of the evidence they claim they have against David. Now, keep in mind, when these charges were first announced, prosecutors said they had around 40 terabytes of evidence in the case. That's an overwhelming amount of evidence. And just to put it into perspective, 40 terabytes is about 40,000 gigabytes. So the totality of the alleged evidence they're talking about is massive. Now, one question I have is this. Does that 40 terabytes include everything found on his phone, or is that counted separately? Because as of right now, they haven't fully clarified that. But what they have made clear is that it's going to take a long time to actually go through and present all of this material to the court. And the reason for that is because of how large the amount of data they have is, but also because of the sensitive nature of some of the material they claim was found on David's phone. So what they're basically saying is this isn't something they can just rush through, because not only is there a huge amount of data, but some of it requires very careful review before it can even be presented to the court, which means we're obviously still at the beginning.
This is what I don't understand. Like, how the fuck are you going to be able to defend something like that? You know what I'm saying? Like, clearly this dude is sick and has an issue, has a problem, a mental issue, you know what I'm saying? And he acted out these issues. As a representation of him, how do you even clear his name when all of this shit is in his phone? We got 40 terabytes of confidential evidence. Like, how are you getting this nigga off?
Of what's about to come out in this case. Now, when it comes to this evidence, what exactly does it include? Obviously, we don't have full descriptions of everything, And honestly, that's not something you'd even want to get into because, bro, just thinking about this shit is just like, the nature of this type of material is obviously just like, when you think about it, it's disturbing. Like, all this shit
It's
is
sick as
disturbing, right?
fuck.
But based on what's been said so far, this isn't just one source of evidence. It includes data from his phone, his iCloud storage accounts, items collected through multiple search warrants, and of course, a large amount of forensic material tied to the investigation. So when you hear prosecutors talk about the totality of evidence, they're talking about everything combined, his entire digital footprint, plus what investigators have gathered along the way. Now, during the hearing, David was in court wearing an orange jumpsuit. Now, we didn't really get no pictures of this. We did, however, get some courtroom sketches, as you can see on the screen right now. That's David right there. And from what it looks like, David appears kind of composed in court, not showing much visible emotion. Now, that could mean a lot of things. It could be a legal strategy. I don't know. It could be how he's choosing to present himself, or simply how he's handling the situation emotionally. But regardless, it's just something I noticed in some of that footage. Now, right before David got arrested, he was living it up. And according to the people in the area he lived, there were gatherings and parties happening at the house he was staying in. So to go from that to now sitting in court facing charges like this, it just shows you how fast life can come at you. Now, when it comes to David's legal team, they're taking a very specific approach here, like we touched on.
You know, man, as I'm watching this, some people just don't know how good they got it. You finally made it, so to speak. You got a record deal, got $1 million deal or whatever, couple million, and you are now in a stratosphere that some could only dream of. There's plenty of women that will throw themselves at you. You know what I'm saying? For you to go out here and take interest in a child, 14, you're still a child in my eyes, because I was still a child at 14. I was child-minded. For you to go that far to entertain dealing with someone underage just goes to show you how money only just makes shit worse for people. Like, you really have to be sick in the fucking head. And it makes me then wonder, where were your parents? You know what I'm saying? What were you exposed to at your young age to make you, act out like that? The fuck is going on, man?
They're pushing for the prosecution to present their evidence as quickly as possible. And they've even taken it a step further by exercising his right to fast track the process. Kind of like when you're at the airport and there's like a fast track line. You're trying to get through all this just to get through security and all that stuff, right? So that's exactly what they're doing in this case here. They're trying to fast track the entire process, essentially asking the court to quickly determine whether there's enough evidence for this case to move to trial, which is something you don't always see in situations like this. So the question is, why do they feel so confident? Well, some legal experts are kind of saying that the reason why they're so confident is because they just don't believe that they have what they say they have. Now, as of right now, a hearing has been scheduled for next week, where prosecutors are expected to begin laying out their evidence publicly. And that's obviously a huge moment, because for the first time, we're going to start to see what they actually have and how strong their case really is. Now, again, we don't know the full extent of this material. I don't really even want to know, but, we don't know. And also, it hasn't been stated whether Celeste is connected to any of it. And that would be absolutely horrifying if that was the case, by the way. It's not even something you want to think about too deeply. We just know how disturbing this entire story is already, right? Especially considering it involves a dead 14-year-old little girl. Now, here's the thing about this particular announcement from the prosecution. If you're already in a situation where you're being accused of something this serious, a lot of people are going to look at any additional allegations and immediately...
Now, listen, and hopefully I don't catch no backlash for saying this, but I know the family is definitely grieving this situation. I mean, I would be too, but there has to be some accountability taken here. You know what I'm saying? Because why on earth is a 14-year-old girl being allowed to move about in this way, dealing with someone that's a lot older than her, who's an adult, who's in adult settings with, narcotics and, alcohol and things like that? Why is she even being allowed to roam about with someone like that? Where's the mother? Where's the father? Where's the aunties, the uncles, the big brother, sister, cousins, whoever? You know what I'm saying? Where are they at? Because there's no reason why she shouldn't be here today.
Connect the dots. Whether that's fair or not, that's just how people process things. So when prosecutors come out and say they allegedly found material like this on his devices, that's going to shape public perception in a major way. And a lot of people will believe that. Now, of course, we don't know if it's true. I can't say for sure, but this is what the prosecution is claiming. And something else I've kind of been thinking about, right? As you know what makes this even more disturbing? This is something I haven't really seen people bring up, particularly when it comes to this case. But when it comes to cases involving this type of, disgusting material, those situations can sometimes involve more than just one person. Now, I want to be very clear, nothing has been confirmed in this case that suggests that, but it does raise questions about how something like this even existed in the first place, allegedly, according to the prosecution, and whether there could be more layers to the situation that we just don't know about yet. And again, that's not me making any claims, that's just acknowledging the reality of how complex cases like this can be. I want you guys to keep in mind, man, like David wasn't some unknown, starving, struggling artist. This was someone with major success, songs with millions and billions of streams. Someone who had a lifestyle that naturally comes with a lot of people around him, whether that's friends, associates, people working with.
I'm not gonna lie. I mean, up until now, I didn't even know anything about this nigga and his music or anything like that. Maybe it's because, I'm not in this, world of music. Like I've said in some of my other videos, I'm listening to like your Larry Jones and Currencies and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I don't listen to his music, and I damn sure I'm not gonna listen to it now, because I just feel like his music was just a premeditated act. And he was just telling us the whole entire time what he intended to do.
Him. And we do know that from a lot of the early reports in this story that a lot of people had access to his houses and kind of like the properties he was staying at and his vehicles. So when you look at a situation like this, it does make you think about the environment around him. Now, again, to be clear, there's nothing that's been confirmed suggesting anyone else was involved in any of this, but it does raise questions about who was around, what people may or may not have known, and how much of this situation was visible to others behind the scenes. And another aspect of this is, if these allegations turn out to be true, is how does something like this even go undetected for so long? Because this right here actually brings attention to a much bigger issue, and that's how vulnerable children can be in situations.
And that's the crazy shit too, right? Is that we live in a day and age with all of this security, all of this surveillance, but yet these are some of the most unsafest times. You feel me? Don't get me wrong. There was a lot of shit going on back in the 90s. I'm sure the 80s and 70s. A lot of things went unsolved, things like that. But you had a little bit less worry, I would say, back then, because everybody looked out for each other. You know what I'm saying? Like there was none of this. Everybody just wants to pull out their phone when they see something getting ready to go down. Nobody's ready to throw hands and help a person out. So with all this security, this is like the most unsafest times that we live in.
Like this. And it becomes even more concerning when you're talking about someone who is high profile, someone with access, influence, and resources, which is why, honestly, this is something I would always tell parents: stay aware of what the hell your children are doing, and
right, exactly.
Where were her parents? As you possibly can. Very important in these times, because situations like this aren't as far removed as a lot of people might think.
In the first place.
To be fair, there are systems in place today that are designed to catch things like this. As an example, social media platforms and a lot of these tech companies do work alongside law enforcement to flag and report suspicious material, which can then lead to further investigations. And that's something that's actually very important, because without that, a lot of these situations may never come to light. But at the same time, the reality is this kind of issue doesn't just affect one person or one case. It's something that can impact anyone, whether that's your family, your friends, or people around you that you care about who got children, right? And that's what makes conversations like this uncomfortable, but also they're very necessary, because at the end of the day, it goes beyond just one case. It speaks to a bigger problem in society. And when you can see the impact of that, especially the negative impact of a lot of these things, it makes you take them way more seriously. Now, again, to be clear, everything we're talking about here is based on what prosecutors are alleging. None of this has been proven in court yet. And of course, I'm talking in general right now about how important this conversation in general is. But conversations like this really highlight the reality of what's going on in the world right now, and why these situations need to be taken seriously. Because whether this specific case proves true or not, and this specific allegation, the issue itself is very real. And honestly, I don't even want to spend too much time on this conversation, because if I'm being real with you, it's uncomfortable to even talk about. But at the same time, this is one of those cases where you kind of have to cover every aspect of it, even the parts that don't feel so comfortable to talk about. Because the reality is, this whole situation is obviously disturbing, but this aspect of it, very disturbing. And that's what it really comes down to. This highlights. So none of the stuff that we're talking about, it's not rare, it happens, it's not distant, can happen to somebody that's close to you or somebody that you know. In general, it's something that's affecting everyday people and their families. So I think this particular conversation, even though it's really dark, it's actually a great reminder of what's happening in this world. It forces you to acknowledge something that most people would rather not think about at all. But that's also why conversations like this are so important, because ignoring it doesn't make it go away. And of course, let's kind of keep in mind that there are more resources now to actually fight back against things like this, and more people speaking on it and trying to bring awareness to it. And I think that's important, because without that, a lot of these situations would just stay in the dark, right? And I just hope that none of what we're talking about right now is even connected to Celeste, because that would make an already tragic situation even worse. So this is what the prosecutors are saying they found on David's phone. I guess we're going to find out the truth about this very soon. I'm not even going to ask you what you think about this, because obviously I think we all kind of think the same thing about this particular allegation from the prosecution. This type of stuff is just like, it's disgusting, man. I don't know what to say, right? But again, this is what they're alleging. We don't really know if it's the truth. We're just gonna have to wait and see, right? More updates will be coming in, and you guys can count on the fact that I'll be here speaking about it with you. You guys have a good Friday, and I'll catch you.
All right, it's gonna be the end of the video. Shouts out to him. Like I said, this is a pretty unfortunate situation, and for Celeste, of course, because I genuinely feel like we don't know where her life, and girls such as herself, and even, you know, boys her age, you know, that have lost their lives senselessly, you know what I mean? And like I said, somebody in her family, somebody has to take accountability. And I'm sure that's the, you know, haunting part. The hurtful part is that this could have been avoided if somebody had been monitoring her, supervising her. You know what I'm saying? At 14, you know, the world is just being thrown at you and you are trying to figure things out. You're going through hormonal changes and stuff like that. You know, you don't have no business dealing with somebody like that. You should be in your books, you know, trying to figure out your life, maybe do streaming or something like that. Where was her family? Where was somebody? You feel me? But yeah, this nigga here, he's definitely going down for sure. Like I said, whatever they got in his phone, I'm pretty sure is, you know, very disturbing. You feel me? So I would imagine that they are definitely going to throw the book at him. I don't think he's getting off for this one. But yeah, we're going to continue to cover this. You feel me? If you made it this far, I appreciate you. Make sure you chin check the like button, take the subway, and be sure to sound off in the comments section till they kick your asses up out of there. I want to know what y'all think. Like I said, let's just have a conversation. Let's talk amongst each other. You feel me? All that being said, I'm about to go ahead and take my ass on to my 9 to 5. It's your boy Robbie. Until the next video, we gone.